Hello and welcome everyone to another episode of NF2NU. This is our short series of video podcasts covering a wide range of issues that affect NF2ers. Big thank you to the National Lottery for funding this part of a project to support NF2ers, providing information through COVID. We want to say a massive thank you to everyone that's given us feedback so far. This is creating now a new format. We'll have more regular videos and they will now be half an hour. But that aside, I'm absolutely delighted to be welcoming NF2er Jade with us today. Jade's going to be here talking about her experience in the run-up to getting a cochlear implant. So Jade, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
It's amazing. I think what's really nice, I think from my perspective, is that you've not actually had the implant fitted yet. So it's not a case of this has been amazing or this has been terrible. You know, it's really practical for us to understand what those steps are up to that point. So I guess the first question for me is, at what point did you decide to explore getting a cochlear implant?
So I lost my hearing quite suddenly. I had gum and knife last May, and the hearing almost went within a month. So my NF team wanted me to have a hearing test just to check how bad it was. Um, so I met a lovely audiologist at St Thomas's, Claudine, who had a background in NF2. She normally works at Guy's, but because of the pandemic, was moved over to St Thomas's. And you know, I was given a hearing aid that was giving me a little bit of sound, and she basically was like, "This hearing aid is doing nothing for you." Um, you know, you can hear sounds, yes, but you've got no speech recognition. It's not doing much for you. You need a cochlear implant. And I was like, yeah, well, you know, my NF team kind of want to wait to assess the swelling of the tumor, to see if that changes my hearing back. And she was like, no, there's damage to the nerve. You need a cochlear implant. I'm going to refer you for one. And I was like, okay, you know, that seems very quick. And then that's when I started looking into them. So my mum had an ABI, so I kind of knew a little bit about implants, kind of. You know, I knew that it was in your head and you had something on the outside of your head. So yeah, so that's it really. That's when I sort of started looking into it.
I mean, that's great that you had so many people around you that were sort of suggesting these ideas to you, because sometimes people don't have that suggested. They don't know about that option, do they? So they're kind of just left for a period of time without knowing that actually they could do something to help improve their hearing a little bit. So I was curious as to how much you knew about the option of cochlear implants before someone suggested it to you. Were you aware? I mean, I know your mum has an AVI, so you must have had an awareness of that. But did you know about cochlear implants being used for NF2ers?
Yeah, so when I lost the hearing on my other ear, maybe 5 years ago, um, I was referred for a cochlear implant again, and I had the needle in the ear test, where they put a needle through the eardrum. It's all very numb. You can't feel it. They put lots of drops in. They put a needle through the eardrum, and they play sounds to see if the nerve picks it up. Mine didn't on this ear, so the nerve was completely dead. So Rupert, the surgeon, said, you know, the other option is to have an ABI on this side, because obviously it works differently to a cochlear. And I said, you know, where my hearing on this side was so good, I I didn't really want to have anything. Well, I mean, I didn't really want to have surgery for the sake of having surgery. So we sort of left that option. So I knew that there was a couple of options. but they always recommend a cochlear first because it works a little bit better with the nerve.
And I think, it's when they suggested an OVI, did they suggest it as a standalone surgery? Because, I mean, just one thing quickly for the audience here is cochlear implants. And if you're not aware, cochlear implant works differently to an OVI. So there's almost 3 stages of hearing technology, if you like. So you have your hearing aid, which is entirely on the outside, and then you have your cochlear implant, which is obviously fitted into the cochlea. So you have an implant on the inside with a magnet, and then you have the external piece. And then you move further directly into the brainstem, where you have essentially the same setup. So you have the implant in the brainstem, and then you still have an external part. Now, the cochlear implant surgery is significantly less in depth, if you like, than in AVI surgery. And AVIs are generally used for people who have complete nerve damage, and cochlear implants are reserved for those who have some functioning. So just for clarity there, we will have another episode on AVIs as well, don't worry. Where were we? So yeah, so that was your awareness at that point. I mean, had you talked to other NF2ers who had had a cochlear implant?
I mean, I had lots of appointments. So after I was referred, you go through a series of appointments, and it's because obviously we were it was a pandemic. They were all virtual on Microsoft Teams, which was great because the captions were fantastic on Microsoft Teams.
Unlike here.
I didn't have to guess anything. And it was through everything. So it was just to make sure that I was comfortable with having a cochlear, that my expectations wasn't too high. I mean, I kind of at first thought that an implant was just going to bring back my hearing. I was going to go back to a normal life. And it isn't until maybe the first or second appointment where they were like, nothing is going to sound normal. Everything is going to sound like a robot. And it's, your brain has to learn how to listen again, and to how to hear things again. They did say that because obviously I've only recently lost my hearing, I should have some hearing memory, that I should be able to pick up. I mean, I have no problem at the moment hearing people that I know. So obviously I know their voice. And obviously if I know what we're talking about, then I kind of pick it up a little bit easier than if it was a complete stranger. But yeah, you go through a series of appointments and assessments. It's very intense. But again, they have to make sure. I mean, I think I read that a cochlear implant cost the NHS £45,000. So of course, yeah, they want to make sure that it is right for you. And I think I've gathered that it is right for me. I mean, the team at St Thomas's have been fantastic. They really do know what they're talking about. And because obviously my NF team is at Guy's and St Thomas's, they had a lot of knowledge about the condition. So at one point they sent me a load of videos to watch of people that have had the surgery and the implant, and there were a couple of cases where it sort of showed one didn't like it at all, and then there was a couple where it took them maybe 3 months to adjust, someone it took a year, and they made it very clear, none of the people in these videos have NF2. So it is a little bit different for you. Obviously our tumours do grow, and I have one on the hearing nerve, which hopefully the gamma knife has stopped in its tracks, and won't grow anymore. So hopefully if the implant is successful, it will be successful for a long time.
Oh, I hope so. I really do. And then, I want to just touch on a point there that you made about how the videos didn't have anyone with NF2 in it. Now, I know in previous conversations that you've mentioned that you reached out to NF2ers in online groups and things. What was your experience with that?
I had two different experiences, because the first group, I mean, I literally just went onto Facebook. I love a Facebook group. And I just typed in cochlear implant users and found the top group and joined. And it maybe took a week for me to realize that this group is very American. And, their views and experiences are different to ours, because we have the National Health Service where they have to pay and have insurance for everything. And once I was approved for a cochlear and was told the type of cochlear implant that I should have, I put it in the group and I was like, what's your experiences of this particular one? And all the comments was, how much does it cost you? What insurance company do you have? And I was like, this is no good for me.
Yeah.
And then I found a UK one, which was just so much better. Again, it isn't an NF group, but there are some people with NF in there. And then again, the response was quite mixed. There was a lot of people that had NF2 where it hadn't worked. It hadn't been successful. And then there was one particular person who I'm in contact with quite a lot, that it's like, it's been fantastic. We've had a similar sort of story. Excuse me. We've had a bit of a similar story. So we both had gamma knife on roughly the same size tumor. And then he's obviously had great success with the implant. So it was a bit of a mixed response. There wasn't a particular group for cochlear implants with NF2, which maybe I should start. Maybe.
And it's such a hard thing, isn't it? Because I think I think I've got this right, but I'm pretty sure, because obviously cochlear implants have exponentially grown in the amount that they're delivered in the NHS system. And, for NF2, because usually the issue is around nerve damage, so that doesn't naturally marry up with a cochlear implant. And I heard that one time at a big NF2 conference, someone just stood up and said, do you know what? I tried a cochlear implant with one of my NF2 patients and it works. And so then that sort of ripple effect through NF2 services around the world. I think that's remarkable that someone just went, well, let's give it a go. I think one of the things I want to touch on there is your point about people's experiences, because if you think in some contexts, cochlear implants are quite controversial, so there's this whole mix of issues that come with people's experiences, isn't there? So I think these groups online, they can be both a help and a hinder. In one sense, you want to make sure that your expectations are realistic and you're managing them, and on the other side, you also want to have hope and you want to know that other people have had good experiences, So, I'm really glad you found someone that did, so that you can try and have that support from them, which is great. I think one of the things that I wanted to ask about was your expectations and how much the NF2 team or your ENT discussed those with you. What did they say?
My expectations were quite high. My mum loved her ABI. And so I had great expectations. Firstly, I thought that it was going to bring everything back and it was going to be wonderful and I was going to be able to dance to music again. And obviously, that came crashing down quite quickly. And that is the point of the meetings and the appointments. It's, there is a lot of rehab involved, and it's a challenge because you have appointments for up to a year, and you do different techniques every appointment. You know, there's telephone training, music training,
Oh, wow.
to have a conversation about lip reading, etc. So there's, you know, my expectations at the moment is only that it works, that I want the surgery to go fine, and that 4 weeks after, when they switch it on, it just works. That's my only expectation. From what I get from that, I might have to think about closer to the time.
And I
But
think, you know, so many people go through this, don't they? Because for NF2ers, it's usually a very, very sharp decline in hearing. So it's not something that's experienced from birth, or, you know, in a way that maybe you know, I think my point is we're not born with hearing loss or deafness. So it sometimes can be a really traumatic experience losing that hearing. So I completely get why people are so hopeful, you know, and I was exactly the same, you know, when I was in my process, when I was sort of looking at deciding to get a cochlear implant, I'd had a very similar experience to you, you know, I'd had gamma knife. And before that, I was using hearing aid. And then I think it was about 10 months later, I lost all my hearing. And then the conversations with the cochlear implant came. And then I was the same. I was like, it's going to fix everything. It's going to be amazing, you know. And then at your first appointment, they're like, let's just hold the breath a minute there. But it was useful to have that management. And also, you know, it can be the situation that they prepare you for what's accurate, but it also could be that they prepare you, or that it prepares you for the situation actually you're going to have a greater result than that, you know. So it's fascinating. And I think for my switch on, they told me all I was going to hear was beeps, and that was going to be it, you know. And actually I heard my voice, a bit like an answering machine, you know. So sometimes, because nobody knows what the outcome's going to be, you know, and I think it's really important to have that hope behind it as well. You know, I know earlier you touched on having this needle test to try and sort of give the okay as to whether it was an option for you. After the sort of process started rolling, did you have to have more tests?
lots of tests. You have to have lots of different types of hearing tests, which is different to any other test that I'd had. I mean, last year alone, so 2020, I think I had 6 different hearing test appointments before the cochlear assessment, because obviously my hearing just declined so much and they couldn't understand why it was getting worse and worse. So one of the tests was like a speech test. So there was a TV screen and a man. I think it was filmed in the 1980s or something, because he was very old-fashioned, and he was on the screen and he would say a sentence to me, and I had to repeat the sentence, which I was fine with. And then all of a sudden they turned the screen off, and it was the same man, and I had to repeat what he was saying, and I was like, I can't pick up what he's saying. And they said, it's because you're lip reading. You know, when you're lip reading, it's easier to hear somebody. So I completely failed that test. And then you had to listen to, there was speakers all the way around the room, and they played a sound, and you had to say where that sound was coming from. And they did the test with the hearing aid in and without the hearing aid. Obviously, as soon as it was without the hearing aid, I couldn't figure out where it was coming from. I could hear it faintly, but I was like, I don't know which part. I mean, I obviously suffer with really bad tinnitus at the moment. I've had it constant since last June. It just hasn't given me a break. So what they also did was played some like really loud, like wind rustling noise over the other sound to try and stop the tinnitus and try and make it was all very like, I mean, it's
It
obviously
gets so confusing, doesn't it? Because they're like, right, press the button when you hear a sound, and you're like, all I'm hearing is sound.
yeah, it was very confusing, but I could also understand exactly why they were doing that, because again, they have to make sure that your ear works enough. And it was great. I mean, that particular appointment was like 3 hours long. I think I was absolutely exhausted. Yeah. And obviously, St Thomas's Hospital is across Westminster Bridge. So not only have you got to walk over that bridge to get there, the appointment was hours long, and then I had to walk back over the bridge.
Exhausting.
Yeah. I mean, it was a day out, which was great because obviously we were in lockdown, so it was nice to be able to get out and do something. And then what other appointments did I have? I had a speech therapy session. I don't have any problems with my speech at the moment because obviously I've only been deaf for nearly a year actually. So I've no problems with my speech. And then again, just the psychology type appointments to discuss expectations, and they say to you, this is major surgery. We are fiddling with your brain. This could be some side effects, and I remember actually she said, you could lose your residual hearing after the surgery.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, so I could lose the little bit of hearing I have left, and I could have a cochlear implant that isn't successful. What do I do then?
I know, it's like, which devil do I play with,
Yeah. And I think that was maybe one thing that potentially stopped me from continuing, because I was, we were meant to I was meant to be getting married last November, which then was postponed to December, January, February, March. Hopefully we're getting married in July. So I would quite like to be able to hear my vows. Do I risk this? And then, I think I've said it before, but I love an adventure. I love a challenge. I'm also one of them people that, life is very short. I could easily cross the road tomorrow and get knocked over and lose my sight. So it's let's take the risk. Risks are there to be taken. My friends and family have been great with my hearing.
That's amazing. I think having support around you is so important in times like this as well. And I think, it's really easy for people to underestimate just how difficult sometimes it can be to make those decisions about risk. I mean, I'm similar in a way to sort of being quite pragmatic, if you like, and sort of I'm not risk averse in any way. I will just go, well, do you know what, let's give it a try. If it doesn't work, then I've tried it. And for some people that's a really difficult thing to do, and I think that's where it's really important to make sure you've got a really good support network around you. I'm assuming your partner is super supportive as well with all of this.
Yeah, I mean, he is now my interpreter because obviously where everyone's wearing masks. So he tells me what other people are saying. He takes my phone calls because, believe it or not, when you tell people that you've lost your hearing, they still think that you can take a phone call.
Oh God, yeah. I kind of always know now if someone's phoning me that it's like spam.
Mm.
So one of the things I wanted to ask was about, because you've been going through this entire process through lockdown, how has that affected it for you? Has that been good, bad?
The only way it's affected me, well, I mean, actually, I think it's been easier during lockdown because all of the appointments have been virtual, apart from the 1 or 2 face-to-face appointments. But because they are also working from home, they're able to see people more often. So I was told at the very beginning, this is a 6-month process. And I was like, yeah, that's fine, got plenty of time because I've been furloughed from work. Um, and the appointments were just coming quicker and quicker because they didn't have
Oh,
many
wow.
patients to see. So at one point I was having appointments twice a week. And then all of a sudden, I think had been 4 weeks, and they were like, so your next appointment will be with the surgeon. And I was like, I thought this was meant to be 6 months. So, I mean, that's been great. But then the only disadvantage has been that the NHS aren't allowed to operate at the moment. So I'm
Because
now at
it's
the
almost like a
stage.
really fast lead up, and then, right, you just sat on the edge of your seat now waiting for it to
Yeah,
happen.
I'm just waiting for what will probably be a phone call to say, here's your date. I had my final appointment with the surgeon, who is the legend that is Rupert Upholzer. I mean, I have a lot of time for him. He's great in what he does, and I was so happy that it was him that I was having, because he's part of my NF team. I've known him since I was 16. And he was quite cross actually with the captions, because he kept saying things and the captions wasn't, I think he was trying to say that I might get a metal taste in my mouth. And it was saying, the captions kept saying devil, like you might get a devil taste. And he was really shouting, like, to try and get the captions to say metal. And I was like, it's okay, I get it, I understand. Like, I don't know what the devil tastes like, but I'm sure that's not what I'm gonna taste. But yeah, so that's been great, because obviously he was also relaxed at home, having that appointment. And the lady that's been looking after me, Isabel, she was also in the appointment, as well as 2 students. So there was lots of different people on the screen while I'm like trying to read the captions, trying to write everything down. Because obviously I knew that I was only going to get the 1 appointment with him. And then at the end of the appointment, he was like, I'll see you on the day. God knows when that will be.
Oh
But
my God. Oh my God. I think it's really great, isn't it? Because when you feel a relationship with a surgeon, it makes you feel so much more comforted, doesn't it, going into something like that, and I don't know what your surgical history is, but, for me, I like to have a level of trust in a surgeon before I have a surgery. And I think that's so important, because lots of people really, I think, take for granted just how much we as NF2ers have to put our trust in someone else, for something quite serious, I think the captions thing is really funny though, I mean, I have quite strong opinions on using auto captions for medical appointments, but that aside, there are still sometimes issues with, Wi-Fi strength. And if you've got a communications professional there, sometimes it's like, and it's so frustrating. And I think hearing people are so not used to having that experience. So they're like, how do people live with this? Well, this is daily life, you know. But I think it's great for them to have that experience, doesn't it? So I think moving forward then, obviously you're waiting for your surgery date now. But after you've had your surgery, what happens next?
I'll have 4 weeks of complete downtime, which I'm very nervous about because they've said that I can't even wear my hearing aid. But I think that's because of the bit that goes over the ear might interfere with the scar. But I'm gonna try and just put the bit in my ear. I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, there's 4 weeks of downtime, quiet time as they call it. And then there's switch on. So, which to be honest, I know I said I'm scared about the downtime, but I am petrified about the switch on, because like I don't know where I hear the sound from. Like, is it in my brain? Is it like, it's, I think that's going to be more daunting. And I know that after they've switched it on, they send you outside the hospital for half an hour. And obviously, St Thomas's is surrounded by Parliament, and Big Ben, although Big Ben doesn't bong at the moment, but they send you outside to sort of listen to the surrounding
I mean, that's
things.
really throwing you in the deep end, isn't it?
Literally, like outside you go to busy Westminster Bridge, and then you go back in and say, no, that was too loud, or that, I didn't hear that, or oh my god, what's that noise? Which I think is good. They don't just sort of send you on your way and say, see you in a week. And then after that, the rehab starts. So all the different training. Yeah, no rest for the wicked.
It's really interesting because I had my cochlear implant fitted maybe like 11, 12 years ago, and I didn't have any of those I didn't have any sort of telephone training. I didn't have I didn't have to leave the hospital to test it all out, and it was a very different experience for me back then. So it's really interesting to see just how far the process has evolved up until now. And with more and more implantations being done, I think they're learning so much more new things, aren't they? How to improve the experience and things. So, cochlear implant aside, tell me about the wedding. I mean, so you've changed the wedding date now to July. Massive
Yes.
congratulations. I really hope that goes forward for you. And I think really that's all my questions that I've covered now in this. And, I implore anybody who's watching the show, if you have any further questions, please do let us know and we can put them to Jade and try and find out the answers for you. But Jade, thank you so much for being with us today. I really, really hope you have the outcome you're looking for with your switch on. And, absolutely massive congratulations with the wedding. Let us know how you get on with it all, won't you?
Thank you. Yeah, I'll keep you updated with everything.
Excellent stuff. Okay, so that's it for today's episode. Don't forget to head over to our channel on YouTube and subscribe. It helps us reach more people out there. Also, check out some of the other videos we've got out there. Next week, we'll be dropping another episode, and we'll be talking to another NF2er about his experience with an AVI. So keep your eyes peeled. Thank you very much. Take care and stay safe.